Book it.
I'm not as well read as I'd like to be. There's just no time to read.
If you're like me, you're always on the go.
And there's always so much work to do. Either I'm busy cooking dinner, or I just have no break. Even hard finding time to reflect, pray, and meditate.
Follow me to find your next read. Adult story time for professionals.
Book it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Adult Storytime for Professionals. I am your host, come book reviewer, Rommela Janine L. Carzesi, PhD in psychology, well, industrial organizational psychology to be exact, and economics. So this particular book is really more about downtime. You can't be one-dimensional. You can't be about work all the time. And so you need some diversions, some things outside of work that interest you so that you have experiences to draw upon that help you be better at your job. So with that being said, this week's book is a Pennsylvania Dutch mystery with recipes, and it's by Tamar Myers, Tea with Jam and Dread. I used to really be someone who was kind of into those Beaton books, Beaton, and her main character was Hamish. And Hamish was a constable in like rural Scotland and did all of these sorts of like interesting things, but it was like a series of books with the same character. I get the sense that this is the same type of book where it's a character that goes from book to book to book. I haven't read any of her works before, but you know, I like the idea of cooking, and I thought the title was just like campy good fun. Tea with Jam and Dread by Tamar Myers. So what do we have here on the back? If you enjoy cozies with unrelenting slapstick humor, the Pennsylvania Dutch mysteries are your cup of tea. And that is according to Booklist on Batter, Batter, Off Dead. Fans of culinary cozies will welcome Tamar Myers' Thou Shalt Not Grill, Publishers Weekly on Thou Shalt Not Grill. So I guess those are two other books that she has written as a part of this series. Anyway, if you're just joining Adult Storytime for Professionals for the first time, this particular show is all about one book, this time this book. And what I do is I read excerpts from the book and share my reactions to the book. And then at the end, instead of giving a thumbs up or thumbs down, I'll give you some sort of indication about how likely I am to try and work it into my schedule to be able to actually finish reading the book. So, with that being said, let's see what's on the inside here. So the inside cover, deciding that the Penn Dutch Inn needs to go more upmarket, Magdalena Yoder is delighted to welcome the Earl and Countess Grinsley Snodgrass and their family as honored guests, looking forward to the challenge of introducing English nobility to traditional American culture. But as Magdalena is about to find out, the Grinsley Snodgrasses are by no means the easiest of guests. And at the same time, she has to contend with the discovery of a mummified corpse trapped in her elevator shaft. Then tragedy strikes. A traditional Pennsylvania Dutch picnic in Stuckey Ridge when one of the Grinsley Snodgrasses disappears over the edge of Lover's Leap. Did he fall or was he pushed? And where is the body? Clearly, Magdalena has her work cut out. But as countless miscreants have learned, when Magdalena's in the kitchen, criminals and guests alike will get their just desserts. How can you not love that? It's campy. So anyway, Chapter 1. My name is Magdalena Porticula Yoder Rosen, and I have a heart full of Christian joy, but I am not a happy woman. This may seem like a paradox, but please allow me to explain. The joy comes from the certainty that my sins are forgiven and that I will, for a fact, be going to heaven. But how can I be happy when my only sister faces a 20-year prison sentence for aiding and abetting a convicted serial killer? Even more damaging to my psyche is the fact that the serial murderer, Melvin Stolfus, our erstwhile police chief, is not only my brother-in-law, he is my biological half-brother. Well, that sounds inbred. That sounds inbred. No one would guess that we are related by looking at us because I resemble an uptight mare, although with pinned back ears and somewhat larger teeth, whereas Melvin is the spitting image of a praying mantis. So you get an image that these are not attractive people, which is okay, you know. Whereas Melvin is the splitting image of a praying mantis. At any rate, through some inexplicable means, Melvin was able to cast an evil spell just about on everyone he met. So I guess he was a charmer. The result was a bizarre cult known as Melvinism. Its adherents worshipped him as if he were a deity. Oh, well, she was serious. Okay. Someone discovered a complete set of scriptures called the Book of Melvin and a second volume titled Sacred Hymns to Melvin, both wrapped in a feed sack and tucked away in the far reaches of a hayloft of a long-abandoned barn. The book's contents were nothing more than a bunch of fairy tales in which my bug-eyed, bobble-headed brother performed a series of outrageous miracles. Stuff impossible to believe. However, that did not stop the local yokels from falling for it. Not only did they fall for this claptrap hook, line, and sinker, they proselytized others as if tomorrow was the end of the world. In a way, it was the end of my world because when Melvin turned into a killer, his cult followers protected him wherever he went. Truly, my tale of Melvin is tragic enough to sadden any good woman, but my unhappiness did not begin. My unhappiness did not begin then. Even now, my face burns with shame as I confess that some years ago, I became what I refer to as an inadvertent adulteress. Ooh. Yes, I know there are others who will always call me just plain adulteress, and I suppose that is their right to do so, but it is also my right to suppose that they are just plain envious. Anyway, it happens like this. I was a young woman and a virgin. I had no idea what a naked man looked like. Supposing that they all looked similar to Michelangelo's statue of David, a photo of which I'd had a chance to come upon in a travel magazine. You can imagine then that when I did espy the real thing on my wedding night, as it wobbled straight at me like a headless turkey neck, okay, I'm pretty devout Muslim, and I'm hoping that the rest of the parts of this book, to which there are Christian references, aren't so vulgar. But, that's me and my stuff, so let me just kind of go through this here. You can imagine then that when I did espy the real thing on my wedding night, as it wobbled straight at me like a headless turkey neck, that I screamed and dived under the covers. After that traumatic night, I could never look at a real turkey without blushing, and Christmas dinner was forever ruined. But wait, if the only horror of my tale ended there, it would have been it would at least remain my private nightmare. Alas, that was not to be. Just as the ex version, that would be me, now newly wedded and bedded, freshly minted matron, was on the verge of experiencing marital bliss, her husband, Aaron Miller, blurted out the name of his first wife. That's right, his first wife. A woman with whom he was still married. I signed the divorce papers, he whined. How was I supposed to know that I needed to show up in court? It was my first divorce. Well, we all make mistakes, and I might even have been able to stick by Aaron through all of this debacle. I had promised till death do us part, except that within a matter of days he confessed that there was a child involved. A daughter by the name of Allison. Long story short, my marriage to Aaron was annulled, and I met and married Dr. Gabriel Rosen, whom I call the Babester. Several years ago, Gabriel and I ended up formally adopting Allison, now age 14, because it turned out that neither Aaron nor his first wife really wanted her. So, again, that's kind of inbred, but okay. 1 year ago, at age 49, I gave Allison a younger brother, delivered in quite the more usual way. There you have it. If only in a rather large nutshell, the history of my unhappiness. Given the extent of my suffering, please indulge me by permitting me one last observation. A woman with 2 husbands is an adulteress, whereas a man with 2 wives is merely a bigamist. Why, might you ask? It's because all 3 of the biblical patriarchs were polygamists. Forsooth, being an inadvertent adulteress, I was the victim of rape. My maidenhood was stolen from me by an act of deception. That's putting it plain and simple enough, is it not? Okay, so to me, that's like a ridiculous sentence that I just read. Again, my opinion, but that's not rape. Rape is a very serious thing, and that's just not rape. I mean, she was, this character was hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, but I don't think raped. All right, so let's see. All right, so let's find something else here. I, however, had turned down a myriad of proposals from Doc. Therefore, in the eyes of the world, my grief couldn't hold a candle to the spinster Agnes, who had answered in the affirmative only once. No, siree, and Bob's your uncle if I had wanted to. I could be the wider woman Schaefer, with a billy goat named Gruff to share my bed. Believe me, if our situations were reversed, I would do a far better sight of mourning. Mourning. I would roll around in the dirt like some primitive tribeswoman I read about in a novel. And, of course, I'd do a fair amount of wailing and carrying on, just plain screeching, too, since I'm already pretty good at that. Let's see what here. Poor Agnes. I had promised to be good and not embarrass her, but I just couldn't help myself. We are supposed to be an egalitarian country, although money always pulls rank. And there are certain family names that are synonymous with old money, in quotes, and good breeding, also in quotes. The truth is, however, that it is human nature to have a higher opinion of oneself than one's neighbor. What Magdalena means, Agnes said, her face the color of a cardinal's breast, is that she is descended from a Delaware Indian princess. Really, Lady Aubrey said. So you have a title then? Indeed, I do have a title, your ladyship, I said. I just keep it with my insurance policy in the glove compartment of my car. All right. Let's see. I arranged my lips in what approximated, or so I hoped, a placid smile. I don't allow food to be taken upstairs. You see, here in the colonies, we are plagued by all manner of vermin, such as have been long since eradicated on your side of the pond. Just the other day, I saw a cockroach as large as a Volkswagen Beetle. It was trying to wrestle a mattress out of room 6. On account of some woman tourist had sneaked a bag of chocolate bars into her room and then accidentally sat on one, thereby smashing it into the bed. All traces of belligerence melted from Pinagrene's face. It was like watching a souffle fall when the oven door had been slammed. Unfortunately, this caused a mustache to droop further. This caused his mustache to droop further, making it even more difficult to understand his hoity-toity accent. Can I then be blamed for tuning out a lot of what he said? Based on what the Babester filled me in on later, what follows is a somewhat faithful rendition. I say only somewhat because at last I don't always pay strict attention when the Babester is speaking either. One might say that I have a short attention span. Frankly, he said, you're one fine specimen of a woman, good teeth, long limbs, and strong withers. I take my membership in the House of Lords quite seriously, you know. I believe in the principle of noblesse oblige. In all honesty, it has been a long time since I've been privileged to encounter a spokeswoman both as articulate and, dare I say, imaginative as you in either chamber of government. You, madame, are an honor to your sex. With that last remark, he doffed an imaginary top hat. All right, let's see what else we have here. At that, Agnes maneuvered a turn between the table and the sideboard so that she faced me. Magdalena, what are you carrying on about? I don't see how Frenny enters into my private conversation with Rupert. He was showing me a picture of the garbage strike in Naples on his smartphone. It's really disgusting. When I used to complain about having big feet, Papa always said that God made them that way so that I could think fast on them. I tried putting them to good use that morning. Oh, that, I said. I must have been thinking out loud. It had to do with the dialogue I'm writing for the Christmas pantomime. You know, the one I'll be directing for the Sunday school. For the record, I abhor fabrication and eschew embroidering with words, but if they are meant to deceive and or take advantage of someone. However, I believe it is quite different if one follows through and actually performs a task that has been alluded to. That, of course, I meant that I would have to set pencil to paper and prepare a script for puerile pubescent players, or else be guilty of telling a whopper on the Lord's Day. All right, so my impressions up to this point is I don't really like Magdalena. I don't really like any of these characters either. And frankly, I'm not really feeling this. But okay, on page 105, the beginning of chapter 15, we've got a recipe fresh fig bread. Combine and let set for 15 minutes 1 1/2 cups chopped ripe figs, a 1/4 cup cooking sherry. In a small bowl, mix 1 2/3 cup of flour, a 1/2 cup chopped walnuts, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon baking soda, a 1/2 teaspoon nutmeg, a 1/2 teaspoon salt. Beat together in a large bowl 1 1/2 cup sugar, a 1/2 cup salad oil, and 2 large eggs. Blend the flour mixture into the oil mixture. Gently fold in figs. Pour batter into well-greased 5 by 9 inch loaf pan. Bake at 350 degrees for 1 1.25 hours, or basically an hour and 15 minutes. Cool in pan for 10 minutes. Invert on a rack to cool. It freezes well. That sounds pretty good. I'm wondering if there's some other recipes that maybe I've missed. Let's see here. There are other recipes. There's one for banana nut bread, but I'll keep looking. I think everything is going to be bread because we've got the jam situation on the front. Although, at the beginning of chapter 5, which is page 37, how to make the perfect cup of tea. When boiling the kettle, always use freshly drawn cold water. This helps the flavor develop. Warm the teapot in advance by swirling a small amount of boiled water in it before discarding. Insert 1 teaspoon of loose tea powder per person and 1 extra teaspoonful for the pot. Allow the tea to brew in the teapot for 6 minutes before serving. Ideally, the tea should be drunk from a porcelain teacup, just as fine wine may not live up to its full potential when drunk from a mug. The same can be said of fine teas. Always pour the tea before the milk. Okay, so I don't know if I missed it or not. I don't know how much water. I mean, maybe I missed that part, but I guess just assume a cup of water and then a teaspoon of tea powder. But by the way, as a random aside, tea is, the flavonoids in the teas are attacked by milk, so you don't really kind of get the full benefits of green tea or tea period when you add milk. So that's just something to note, although milk and tea does taste good. I do like green tea lattes from Starbucks. Let's see what we have here. As he dabbed gently at my eye, my handsome Jewish husband continued to lecture my Christian brethren. Schadenfreude does not become you, by the way. I know that you have good hearts. I've been to your barn raisings and served on your volunteer fire brigade. It is my firm belief that love is your guiding principle, and that is the way you live your lives. Well, most of the time. Gabe held up his hand, the one holding the soiled handkerchief, but was not about to show that he surrendered. I have just one more thing to say, and then I'll have said my piece. There is no one here who is more loving and more generous than my wife. Yes, it is true she does have a sharp tongue at times. Some folks claim she can slice through cheese, but there wouldn't even be a Beachy Grove Mennonite church if it weren't for her. No one laughed after the cheese remark. It seemed like no one was even breathing. That's 2 things, Allison said after agonizing for a second or 2. Thankfully, her quip cut through the tension just as smoothly as my tongue had sliced through cheese. Nothing would make me happier than to say that my fellow Hernians resumed behaving in the proper Christian manner for which we Americans are best known and are wont even to export overseas. This was especially important to me because of our benefactors of our good example would be the English, a morally bankrupt race to be sure. I offer as proof their penchant for bestowing sexually suggestive names to every dish. Spotted dick indeed. Oh well. Alas, however, in American immigrants among us were not quite as invested in being examples of poor Mennonite brotherhood. All right. Let's see. Well, I think Magdalena's common, Aubrey said. I would never permit such vulgar talk around my table at Gloom and Doom. Let's not bury the Hasage Globesphere. By now, I'd become a bit of an expert on deciphering the English habit of shortening their place names so that they don't bear any resemblance to their spelling. I was quite pleased that I was able to reconstruct the aforementioned estate name from GMBSHR. Although, frankly, since it wasn't quite the same word that the Earl had scrawled in my guest register, perhaps at least one of my antennae should have been tingling with suspicion. But to quote Christopher Robin, I am a bear of very little brain. Magdalena's a queer duck, Rudy said, but she's really all right. You just need to get to know her as well as I do. He dug into the pocket of his sinfully tight jeans and yanked out a pair of keys. It took me a second or two to scan Donald's entire body. Mr. Millard, I said, if your body is a temple for the Lord, then you've been building a mighty large annex. Mozilla yelped with delight. You hear that, Donald? I'd always told you that you was an... That's not what I said, dear, I cried, absolutely mortified. I won't even allow Allison to shorten the word buttocks in my presence. We ain't married, she said. We lied so we could save money on getting one of your famous rooms. All right, that's the alarm. Give me a second to turn it off. All right, so we've been spending time with Tamar Myers, Tea with Jam and Dread. So I shared with you the bread recipe for figs. That seems like that could work out and might be tasty. Don't know about the tea. I don't know about the tea. As far as the book goes, I don't know if you're enjoying some of the sharp wit that was in these pages. I'll give the author credit for being able to kind of convey the sarcastic humor that she wants Magdalena to have. But this book is not for me. And that's all I'm going to say. It's not for me. You may enjoy this book. And if you do, I'm glad I was able to share it with you. Again, this is Tamar Myers, Tea with Jam and Dread. And thank you so much for watching this episode of Adult Storytime for Professionals. See you next time. Bye-bye.